Even though there has not been a major change on the battle map in the first half of November, heavy combat continued raging in Ukraine, as the Russians are continuing their attempts to capture the strategic momentum, while the Ukrainians have kept up their efforts to create an improbable bridgehead on the left bank of the Dnipro. But it is tough to expect significant breakthroughs on the battlefield in Ukraine at this point, which was described by the Commander-in-Chief of the Ukrainian Armed Forces, General Zaluzhnyi, as a stalemate, particularly as the mud season makes an entrance in Ukraine. This, however, does not make the war in Ukraine any less bloody, and sadly more of the same is expected. Welcome to our update on the war in Ukraine. This video is made possible thanks to the generous support of our YouTube members and patrons. Their contributions are the backbone of our work. As a token of our appreciation, our patrons and YouTube members enjoy 2 exclusive videos every week. Currently, they have access to a complete series on Xenophon's Anabasis, the First Punic War, History of Prussia, Italian Unification Wars, Risorgimento, and numerous other fun videos. Additionally, our Pacific War series is ongoing, and we're excited to announce the release of a new series on the Russo-Japanese War and Albigensian Crusades, and much more, exclusively for our backers. If you want to join this fantastic community, you can find the links in the video description and pinned comment. By becoming a patron or YouTube member, you'll gain access to exclusive videos, early access to all our public content, release schedules, wallpapers, and an invitation to our active Discord server, where we engage in lively discussions. Your support is invaluable, and we sincerely thank you for making our work possible. In the first half of November, the Russian army continued making slow progress in the Avdiivka section. Russia has been throwing men and equipment at the Ukrainian positions to cut all supply lines to the AFU stronghold in Avdiivka. The Ukrainian military correspondent Yuri Butazov stated that the Russian army made another major push in this area on November 2nd. The Russian troops crossed the railway near Stepova on the northern flank. According to Butazov, this was done by Russian infantry groups supported by artillery without the involvement of tanks and armoured vehicles. He blamed it on the fact that the Ukrainian command had not built proper defensive fortifications beyond the main stronghold in the Avdiivka coke plant. The Russian advance beyond the railways threatened the Ukrainian supply line to Avdiivka through Bedichi. The Russians also expanded their control around Opitna on the southern flank. Butazov also claimed that the Ukrainian 110th Mechanized Brigade retook several positions inside Avdiivka lost to the Russians during the October attacks. On November 5th, Russian sources reported a successful Ukrainian counterattack on the northern flank, leading to the withdrawal of some Russian units to the east of the railway. But on November 11th, the Russians conducted another assault, capturing ground beyond the railway to the north of Stepova and entering the eastern outskirts of this village. The Russian army has also started building fortifications in captured lands near Avdiivka, which makes them less susceptible to surprise Ukrainian counterattacks in this section. For now, Ukraine controls the supply lines to Avdiivka, but continued Russian pressure from 3 directions puts the Ukrainian control over the salient under major risk. The Ukrainian counteroffensive in the Bahkmut section of the front has stopped progressing for weeks now, and in this period, the Russians counterattacked to regain some of the lost ground. The Russians advanced along the Berkivka reservoir and made some progress towards Budanivka on the northern flank. In the south, the Russian army regained some previously lost positions east of Klishchiivka and around Andriivka. Elsewhere in Donetsk Oblast, the Russian army launched yet another attack on Vuhledar and saw several of its armoured vehicles destroyed without much to show for it, while their attack on Novomikhailivka, southeast of Donetsk, was more successful, as now the village is contested. Ukraine is trying to regain momentum by working on expanding its presence on the left bank of the Dnipro. So far, elements of the 35th and 36th Naval Infantry Brigades have a confirmed presence north of Oleshki, north of Poima, and in Krinky. The most notable among these is Krinky, where on November 6th, the Ukrainians were able to deploy armoured vehicles, including a BTR-4. Russian bloggers also claimed that the Ukrainians have been able to increase the number of troops in the Krinky area from 30 to 300. They claimed that at one point the Ukrainians captured part of the forest south of Krinky, but were later pushed back. Russia actively uses FAB high-explosive air bombs and artillery, along with infantry assaults, to destroy the Ukrainian bridgehead in Krinky. Russian sources cite a high number of Ukrainian electronic warfare tools interfering with Russian drones, artillery on the right bank, and swarms of drones preventing them from destroying the Ukrainian bridgehead. One of the curious developments from the Kherson front was the publishing of the order of the Russian Ministry of Defense to regroup to more advantageous positions to the east of the Dnipro on the TASS official media outlet. It was later deleted by TASS and refuted by the Ministry of Defense, but the fact that such a statement was published fueled speculations of Russian information diversion to trick the Ukrainians, or a genuinely difficult situation for the Russian Dnipro grouping. We shall see. There is not much to report from the Zaporizhia front. Battles are still ongoing in Robotyne, with both sides continuing to gain ground only to lose it later. The AFU has seemingly lost its offensive momentum in the Velika Novosilka axis as well, as the Russians have even regained some of the previously lost ground around Pryutyne. Overall, the situation on the battlefield has not changed dramatically. Russia is still attacking in the Avdiivka section and counterattacking in the Bahkmut section, while the Ukrainian army is fighting hard to expand its bridgehead on the left bank and continuing to degrade the Russian navy in the Black Sea. A lot will depend on the side's ability to continue supplying their armies and surviving the ongoing war of attrition. Of course, for Ukraine, Western support remains crucial, as Kyiv is still far from manufacturing sufficient military equipment. A lot still depends on the United States, Ukraine's biggest military supplier. The impasse regarding further military support to Ukraine caused by Trumpist Republicans has brought the United States to the brink of shutdown. The Biden administration has been insisting on coupling legislation on aid to Israel with the aid to Ukraine to make sure that the Republicans have no other choice but to further support military aid to Ukraine. The House, which has a Republican majority, voted in favor of standalone legislation on aid to Israel, but the Senate, which has a Democrat majority, voted against it, insisting on the continuation of military support to Ukraine as a precondition for the Israel support. On November 1st, the House Republican Mike Garcia sent a letter joined by 7 other Republicans to President Biden regarding aid to Ukraine. He urged Biden and Zelensky to provide a clear strategy of victory, a clear timeline, and an approximate price tag of support to Ukraine, and give regular updates on the situation in Ukraine to the American public, along with creating a more robust sanctions scheme against Russia as a precondition for the continued support to Ukraine. As of November 16th, the sides have not been able to reach a decision on aid to Ukraine. Both the White House press secretary, Jean-Pierre, and the National Security Advisor, Sullivan, have warned about the consequences of Congress not approving funding for further military aid to Ukraine. They have stated that the funding allocated for Ukraine is almost running out, which has forced the US government to provide small packages of military assistance to stretch out the remaining capacity to support Ukraine for as long as possible. According to Sullivan, it is already having an effect on our ability to give Ukraine everything that it needs, and that effect will only compound over time. Still, in this period, the United States made a couple of significant moves to continue their support of Ukraine. On November 3rd, they announced another military aid package worth $425 million, which included NASAMS and HIMARS ammunition, 155 and 105mm artillery shells, TOW missiles, Javelin and AT-4 anti-tank weapons, small arms ammunition and grenades, explosives, Claymore anti-personnel mines, trucks, winter equipment, and anti-drone equipment. It was also reported that the United States purchased 60 Gepard self-propelled anti-aircraft guns from Jordan to transfer them to Ukraine. Gepard has been one of the most effective Western pieces of equipment provided in this war, and will help bolster Ukraine's defensive and offensive capabilities. It is noteworthy that after a slow start, Germany has become Ukraine's primary provider of military aid in the past few months. The German defense minister has declared that Berlin is going to double its military aid to Ukraine from 4 billion to 8 billion euros in 2024. Germany has also sent or pledged 12 BAT-UMG armored vehicles, 14 Bandwagen 206 all-terrain vehicles, 10 Leopard 1A5 tanks, 5 armored Warthog ambulances, several Zetros and MAN TGS trucks, 4 HX-81 truck tractors, 1 Vicent mine-clearing tank, 3 border protection vehicles, 2 TRML-4D air defense radars, drones, small arms and artillery ammunition, winter equipment, and so on. Other military aid promised or pledged to Ukraine included 40 AMX-10RC armored fighting vehicles, ammunition worth 500 million euros from the Netherlands, 8 Archer self-propelled howitzers, 10,000 assault rifles, 2,000 sniper rifles and 400 grenade launchers from France, 2 NASAMS air defense systems from Lithuania, and a military field hospital from Estonia and Iceland. It was also reported that an F-16 training facility in Romania opened, where Ukrainian pilots will soon start their training. Ukraine is also continuing to work on its domestic military production. One main focus is drones, which continue proving their decisiveness on the battlefield. According to the director of the Ukrainian military production entity, Ukroboronprom, they have started the industrial-level production of Shahed-like drones with a flight range of up to 1,000 kilometers. Ukraine has also started manufacturing FPV drones. Kyiv also got good news from the EU, which authorized the beginning of accession talks with Ukraine on November 8th. The bad news is that the EU is still significantly behind the schedule of its pledge to give 1 million shells to Ukraine, while Hungary continues blocking a €50 billion EU aid package to Kyiv. In the meantime, several sources have reported that North Korea has already sent 1 million artillery shells to Russia. The availability of artillery shells is a crucial part of the war of attrition waged on Ukraine by the Kremlin at this point. According to the Wall Street Journal, Russia has also asked customers of its military production, like Egypt, Pakistan, Belarus and Brazil, to give back previously sold helicopter engines to cover for the helicopter losses Russia has suffered in this war. Most of the international diplomatic activity is now focused on the Middle East, but media reports and rumors of the United States and EU discussing potential negotiations between Ukraine and Russia continued circulating. NBC reported that Ukraine's allies are worried that the war has reached a dead end. Hence, they have been talking with Ukraine about a potential peace deal. The first such meeting took place reportedly in October. Zelensky claimed to be against any negotiations with Russia, which will include the legitimization of territorial losses. According to this report, Western allies may try to persuade Kyiv to start talks by offering security guarantees without a formal accession to NATO. Zelensky has already refuted these claims and stated that nobody is pressuring him to start talks at this point. The other important point that must be considered here is whether Putin wants to negotiate. He is closely observing the situation in the West. He sees cracks in the American political establishment regarding support to Ukraine. He sees that the EU does not always deliver on its pledges on schedule. Putin will be hoping for more Ukraine fatigue in the West, as populists on both sides of the Atlantic Ocean continue to use Western support to Ukraine as their main talking point. Statements of Russian officials demonstrate that they have no intention of starting negotiations if Ukraine refuses to recognize the Russian annexation of its occupied territories. So there is actually no indication that the Kremlin is looking to negotiate with Ukraine and the West if they don't submit to the most ludicrous demands of Putin. On November 1st, the commander-in-chief of the Ukrainian army, General Zaluzhnyi, published an essay called Modern Positional Warfare and How to Win It, while on the same day The Economist published an interview with him. Zaluzhnyi argued that the war is gradually moving to a positional form, describing the current situation on the battlefield as a stalemate. He cautioned against expecting a deep and beautiful breakthrough due to the overall technological and tactical parity between the sides at this point. The simple fact is that we see everything the enemy is doing, and they see everything we are doing. In order for us to break this deadlock, we need something new, like the gunpowder which the Chinese invented, and which we are still using to kill each other. Zaluzhnyi also argued that the positional war is advantageous for Russia, as they simply have more population, which Putin is open to expending. Let's be honest, it's a feudal state where the cheapest resource is human life, and for us, the most expensive thing we have is our people. He emphasized several areas, a change in which will alter the situation on the battlefield. First of all, air superiority, which has been discussed extensively in our videos and other content on the war in Ukraine. Obviously, Russia has more aviation assets, but so far the Ukrainian air defense has largely been able to keep the Russian Air Force at bay and denied Russia complete air superiority. Zaluzhnyi argues that F-16s are not going to solve this issue in favor of Ukraine either, as Russia has also improved its air defense, and now apparently Russian S-400 air defense missiles are capable of reaching beyond the city of Dnipro. He believes that F-16s would have been more useful to Ukraine in 2023 than they will be in 2024 due to the improvement of the Russian air defense. Drones can help Ukraine to get an advantage in the battle for air superiority to some extent, Which leads us to the next main area Zaluzhnyi focuses on: electronic warfare capabilities. According to the Ukrainian commander-in-chief, Russia has significantly modernized its EW forces in the past decade, while 65% of Ukrainian EW tools were from the Soviet era. Zaluzhnyi argues that Ukraine has managed to achieve near parity in EW performance, but he has emphasized the importance of producing anti-drone EW tools in Ukraine and beyond. The key here is to make sure that Russian drones are vulnerable to the Ukrainian EW, while the same doesn't happen to Ukrainian drones. This will require a significant technological breakthrough by Western or Ukrainian military manufacturers. Counter-battery is another key area where Ukraine needs to gain an upper hand in order to win in this war, according to Zaluzhnyi. In his essays, he cautions against underestimating the Russian capabilities, as its military-industrial complex is capable of producing both old and modern weapons. Zaluzhnyi argues that Ukraine gained superiority in counter-battery battle immediately after the delivery of precision munition by its Western allies, but this did not last long, since the Russian army adapted, also through developing its EW capabilities, jamming precision munition, dispersing its artillery, firing from the maximum range, and more active use of drones like Lancet, along with increasing the intensity of shelling by deploying outdated artillery systems. Zaluzhnyi thinks that Ukraine needs to focus on having more recon and strike drones to gain advantage in counter-battery battle. The Ukrainian commander also underlined the importance of finding new tools for mine breaching, which he recognized as one of the key obstacles for the Ukrainian counter-offensive, along with administrative improvement to enhance Ukraine's mobilization capabilities. In his interview, Zaluzhnyi also admitted that his assumption that Russia would withdraw if Ukraine inflicted enough damage was false. "That was my mistake. Russia has lost at least 150,000 dead. In any other country, such casualties would have stopped the war." He also noted that NATO doctrine did not work in the counter-offensive. "If you look at NATO's textbooks and at the maths, which we did, 4 months should have been enough time for us to have reached Crimea, to have fought in Crimea, to return from Crimea, and to have gone back in and out again." What should be made of Zaluzhnyi's essay and interview? First of all, it is a quite frank and sober assessment of the war, admitting that it has turned into a positional affair once again, which suits Russia. But the Ukrainian commander does not give doom and gloom vibes at all, and points to areas Ukraine and its Western allies need to focus on in order to gain the necessary advantage over the Russian army. Zaluzhnyi's statements caused a reaction from the deputy head of Zelensky's office, Ihor Shvovkva, who criticized Zaluzhnyi for releasing too many details to the public, and stated that the commander's stalemate assessment caused a panicked reaction from a cabinet leader of an allied country. Furthermore, Zelensky's dismissal of several commanders and the death of one of Zaluzhny's assistants in a freak accident gave the Russian propaganda a field day. It has been claiming discord between Ukraine's political and military leadership for months. Disagreement is natural, particularly in a stressful situation like Ukraine and its leaders are experiencing now, but the last thing Ukraine needs now is internal discord, and it would be wise for the Ukrainian leadership to convey messages of solidarity and unity at this point. Putin's brutal, unprovoked invasion of Ukraine continues. After withstanding Ukraine's counter-offensive in the Zaporizhia Oblast and around Bahkmut, Russia is back on the offensive to capture Avdiivka. Although it is now experiencing problems on the left bank of the Dnipro, Russia is more comfortable waging the war of attrition than Ukraine, which the Ukrainian commander-in-chief Zaluzhnyi has admitted. He has proposed ways to change the nature of war in Ukraine, and the upcoming months will show if Ukraine and its allies do what is necessary to achieve this. For now, Ukraine has to withstand the Russian offensive and secure a sustainable bridgehead on the left bank of the Dnipro. On November 13th, The Economist cited American sources claiming that at least 70,000 Ukrainian soldiers have died in the war, with a further 120,000 wounded. According to The Guardian, Western officials claim that the total Russian casualties are between 300 and 400,000, and Russia loses between 500 and 1,000 combatants daily around Avdiivka. In terms of visually confirmed equipment losses, we will rely on data from the Oryx blog, as always. As of November 16th, Russia has lost at least 2,462 tanks, 5,096 vehicles, 258 command posts and communication stations, 1,035 artillery systems and vehicles, 304 multiple rocket launchers, 94 aircraft, 132 helicopters, and 322 drones. Ukraine has lost at least 686 tanks, 2,156 vehicles, 18 command posts and communication stations, 433 artillery systems and vehicles, 50 multiple rocket launchers, 78 aircraft, 36 helicopters, and 220 drones. More videos on this topic are on the way, so make sure you are subscribed and have pressed the bell button to see them. Please consider liking, subscribing, commenting and sharing, it helps immensely. Recently, we have started releasing weekly Patreon and YouTube member exclusive content. Consider joining their ranks via the link in the description or button under the video to watch these weekly videos, learn about our schedule, get early access to our videos, access our private Discord, and much more. This is the Kings and Generals channel, and we will catch you on the next one.